My name is Fernando Sasueta. I'm the president of the Gracia Historical Society of Santa Clara Valley. I've been sitting here with the family of the last surviving brother of the Puentes brothers, Manuel Puentes, and I wrote down the names of the various siblings of the children of Julio and Virginia Puentes, and I wrote down that Martin was the oldest, followed by Antonio or Anthony or Tony, and then it was Julia, and Manuel Puentes, Eduardo, Francisco, known as Frank, and Jose Refugio, known as Cuco, and Victoria, known as Vita. At least those are the names that I wrote down, and I understand that Manuel Puentes was the last surviving child of Julio and Virginia.
I'm Carmen Connolly. I am the oldest daughter of Manuel and Teresa Puentes.
I'm Darlene Puentes. I'm married to Dave Puentes.
I am Virginia Puentes Guzalowski, and I am the daughter to Manuel and Teresa Puentes.
I am Teresa Puentes Mariscal, and I am the daughter of Manuel and Teresa Puentes.
I'm David Puentes, and I'm the son of Cuco Puentes, one of the brothers.
I am Francis Puentes, and I was married to Jose Refugio, the youngest of all the brothers. He owned a grocery store in Santa Paula, and at the time, I was going to Sawyer's School of Business in Los Angeles, and I would come home every weekend, and he asked me out on a date. So from there on, he even said, if this happens to be something and we end up getting married, our oldest daughter is going to be named Cecilia, because he had a favorite aunt named Cecilia. So my oldest daughter is Cecilia.
What year was this when you first met?
We got married in 48. My daughter was born in 49, and she was 18 months old when we moved to San Jose. My husband was the last one of the brothers to go into the business.
Right.
Anyway, he was always Cuco, and he, when he had to go into the service, he found out his name was Jose, and of course he went back to my mother-in-law. Why didn't you ever tell me? She said, because I like the name Cuco. Cuco was 18, and Mr. Aiken, the principal of Santa Paula High School, took him down and enlisted him in the Army, which was, why he did it, I don't know. And my father-in-law never said anything. Just let it be.
And when he was at that time, what work was his mother and father doing? What were they doing?
Well, my mother-in-law never worked, and I really don't know what my father-in-law did, but most Hispanics in their area were lemon and orange pickers, most of them. He went to high school there too. Mm-hmm. Whether he graduated or not, I kind of don't think that he did.
He had a shop?
A grocery store called El Triunfo, and we lived behind the grocery store.
What street was El Triunfo on?
Ojai and Harvard. Really didn't know him, and I had a very strict father, so I didn't get around much. But I would come home on weekends from Sawyer's school where I was going, and I used to go to the store. I forget why. There was something at the store, and I forget what it was. at my age, I don't remember what it was, but I would go and buy it there. And so he finally asked me out for a date. And he, like I say, he was born in 24, I was born in 27. And less than a year later, we were married. And we got married there in Santa Paula at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church.
And how many chambelanes was there in the wedding?
I had a big wedding, yes, a big wedding, and we had a big reception in one of the halls in Santa Paula. And I have to tell you something funny. You know, clothes were not like today, and his pants were all wrinkled. So we went back to my mother's house. He got into a robe, and in my wedding dress, I was pressing his trousers.
Oh, God. You gotta get a picture of that.
Yeah. And then we had a big reception outside of town, and we left. My mother didn't want me to leave that night, so we sneaked out. And I don't remember, was either Glendale or Burbank where we stayed that night. Yeah. So, but just the fact that we sneaked out, nobody knew until, where are they? They're gone.
What kind of music and what kind of food was there at the
You
wedding?
know, we had food was Mexican food. Yeah, Mexican food. And let's see, the music. It was just plain the music of the 40s and 50s America. No mariachi, no nothing.
Records? Or was there a group
No,
playing?
no, we had musicians. Yeah, they were musicians. Yes. And there was an area outside of Santa Paula going toward Los Angeles, and the area was called Tijuanita. And my mother-in-law lived there, in that little area. And when we were growing up, Santa Paula was a very racist city. Main Street, south of Main, all the Hispanics lived. North, all the Anglos. Yeah. And in high school, the girls would talk about parties and all, but we were like pariahs. They didn't even talk to us at all. And you know, it didn't bother me then, and I never let it bother me. Never let it bother me. And then I became the first Hispanic to work in a bank. I got a job. After I finished my schooling, I came back with a beautiful letter of recommendation, and I went to Mr. Cordes, the manager. I showed him the letter, and the next words out of his mouth, "When can you start?" And I started like the next day or 2 days later, because the girl whose place I took was leaving. And this was the time of the Bracero program. So they found out how important it was to have someone that spoke Spanish. And the Braceros would come to me and tried to talk to me in their broken English. English. I said, no, yo hablo español. And their eyes would just light up. And then my sister became a teller at the bank. Yeah,
What was her name?
Virginia, like my mother-in-law.
What did you study at Sawyer?
Business. I took shorthand, mathematics. I had a class of nothing but vocabulary. And I remember that sometimes I would, vocabulary, you learn a lot of words. And I would be talking to my sister, and then she says, don't talk to me in your highfalutin words. Yeah. But, and then, like I say, I very soon got married after I graduated. In the grocery store, my father taught me to make chorizo. So I would make chorizo. He would cut the legs of pork, and the tail end of it we'd save and cut that meat up. So it was all pork meat, no additives, nothing. And I would make the sauce from scratch with the dry chili pods. And the minute people knew we had chorizo in the store, it would be gone that same day. It didn't last. And I would make the galvanized tubs. I'd make a full tub of chorizo.
You said in the store. Whose store was it?
My husband, he had a grocery store when I married him.
What was the name of the store?
Puentes Brothers.
You said when you met him, he already had the store. How long? How old was he then, or how long had he had the store?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't. And then kitty corner from the store, my father-in-law had a bar. And my mother-in-law would cook. They would serve food. And my mother-in-law did the cooking in the back of the store. The names of my in-laws were Julio and Virginia Puentes. And we were competitors to an uncle of mine just a block down. And my uncle used to make chorizo. And so we were competitors of my uncle.
What was your uncle's name, and what was the name of his store?
My uncle's name was Jesus Marquez.
Do you know the name of his store?
El Triunfo.
Oh, okay.
El Triunfo.
My name is Virginia Puentes Guzalowski, and I'm looking through this book that my father had done, and it's about his life story. And I'm reading about his early years, where he was born in Limonera on June 22nd, 1916. And he also talks his older brother, Martin, was born in Los Angeles. But his parents, Julio and Virginia, had moved to Limonera by the time my Uncle Tony and I came along, and my father came along. My father talks about his mother being a wonderful cook, and they lived on a ranch, or they had my father had good memories in Limonera. And he also said that his mother had learned to be a very good midwife. Yeah. And she picked up a lot of knowledge treating sick people. And it helped, my father said it really helped our family to survive during the early part of the Depression, because she became known in the region and people paid her for taking care of their sick. She would get a lot of calls day and night. And then in 1927 and 1928, they moved to a ranch in Red Banks between Visalia and Woodlake. and they had vineyards and also had a peach orchard. That's where my father went to school, in Woodland. And let's see, my father said that they moved around a lot, and he went to Isabel School, and said he was an average student. And so he said his family worked for 15 years for a farmer called Pearlie George Christ. He had a ranch in Parlier and a ranch in Kingsburg. He used to hire 3 or 4 families, but when we came, he said we worked so hard, he only needed to hire just 1 family, which was theirs. So, let's see. Dad says he remembers using the grape boxes, sweat boxes, he called them, for tables and beds in Kingsburg after a hard day's work. He used to like to sleep under a tree on a sweat box that I had put a lot of grass in it and a cover tucked in around the top of it for a mattress. So, and he has pictures of his family here. And let's see, before I was going into the Army, there was a man that he used to help, and he used to help him cleaning. And he'd say to me, you know, open up the ice box, get yourself a drink, and my dad helped him and would have a drink. And then the man told him, let me see, I told him I would have to do it. Okay, so the man said, he said, do you like this business? My father said, yes, I do. And the man said, do you want to buy it? I told him I would have to go through my father because I wasn't of age yet. So he said, how much you going to give me for it? I said. And Dad said, well, let me go home and I'll come back. So I'm going to go count my pennies. He ran a couple miles, told his father, and his father, Julio, had said, your uncle offered him $5,000 cash, and he didn't want it. Well, from there down, you better give him $1,000 and the rest in payments. But the father said, don't give him more than $5,000. Okay, so Dad went back and said, how would $1,800 sound to you? I'll give you $1,000 and I'll give you $800 in payments. The man said, okay, it's yours. So let's go make the papers. I went home by then. My father gave me the keys to the car and we bought the place. So I bought it from Solomon Obios. I can't say
Spell it.
Obiols. Let's see. And the name of the bar was Jalisco. And it was at 1101 Harvard Boulevard in Santa Paula. It was a restaurant, cafe, and bar, but it sold more beer than anything else.
Hi, my name is Carmen Connolly. I am the oldest child of Manuel and Teresa Puentes. My early memories of stories of my father from my mother, because my father never talked about it, was the fact that they were a migrant family, that they had a very, very hard life. And in fact, oftentimes when I would ask my father about his childhood, he really didn't want to talk about it. One story that my mother recounted, and I'm not even sure if it's true, was that apparently when all the children were small, the farm that they were working on had a fire, and the house burned down, and grandmother had to grab the kids without their shoes or clothes on, and had to grab them and take them and get them out of the fire, and they ended up losing everything at that point. But from what I heard, there wasn't really a whole lot there that they had. But those were the earliest memories that I have that I was told to me by my mother. Okay, so we have a distant relative. I'm not sure, well, she's related as a Romero. My grandmother's maiden name, I believe, might have been Romero. And she has been collecting the genealogy for the Romero family for years. and lives down in Irvine. And her husband is a Superior Court judge, one of the very first Hispanic Superior Court judges for the state of California. And she has been collecting information almost on a yearly basis. Another story that I heard, and I guess maybe my cousins would be able to confirm, was that grandfather Julio was one of several brothers that came across the Rio Grande, came from, what was that, Texas? Came up from Mexico, through Texas, across the Rio Grande, and then came into California. Life was really rough, and most of the brothers, grandfather Julio was the only one who stayed. The others went back, and that there's even a branch of cousins or second cousins that are up in the Chicago area that are Puenteses, and they're related to us. I don't think I've ever met them.
My name is David Puentes. I am the son of Cuco Puentes, the youngest of the 6 brothers. And stories that I have heard passed down through the family are that my father and his sister Vita did not have to work in the fields when the family traveled up and down the central part of California picking crops. And I do remember asking my father one time what his house was like when he was growing up, and he laughed and he said that the dirt was their floor and the stars were their ceiling as they were traveling, following crops up and down Central California. I also know that as far as education, my father dropped out of high school when he was a sophomore to work, and before joining the Army during World War II. But he also valued education. He later got his GED, and I still have a book that he got. He took a Dale Carnegie course on how to make friends and influence people. So he always did tell us that education was important.
I have contact information for Gloria Lopez, who is doing the genealogy information on the Diaz family, which is my grandmother is Virginia Diaz, who married Julio Puentes. And I have this book that Gloria put together, and this goes way back explaining how we're all connected. Another Puentes genealogist is a cousin of mine. His name is Joseph Puentes, and he lives in North Carolina. The son of Antonio Puentes and Luisa Puentes.
These pictures here are my grandparents, Julio and Virginia Puentes. The farthest picture over is my grandfather Julio when he was younger.
And I'm reading again from Dad's book, Manuel Puentes' life story, and he talks about being in the war, but he says when he got out of the war, his brother Tony was working for an aviation supply company.
Oh.
And Dad started also working, and the company was right in the heart of Hollywood. And he says, I don't think it's there now, but he says, after I worked there for 18 months, my father brought my brothers and me in, and he said, you better get started, so you might as well go somewhere and look to do something. All of the 6 of you together. So he was telling them that. So it was my dad and Tony and Uncle Martin that that my grandfather had asked them, we need to, get started and look to do something. So Tony and my father came up this way looking for a place, looking for some kind of business. I'm assuming they were in LA area still at that time. I told Martin that I would be happy if we were to find a nice swanky nightclub. Well, that was too expensive. And that would cost too much money. So they looked around San Jose, Sacramento, Stockton, and they couldn't find any place that they liked. So decided to come back to San Jose and find a place to make tortillas. That was my brother Martin's idea. He used to work in San Diego and he used to repair airplanes for the war. He was deferred from the war because he worked on airplanes. He used to go to a tortilla factory and he always saw that it was busy, 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 and they hardly ever had enough. He thought it was good business, and that's why he always wanted to start a tortilla factory. And so we did here in San Jose. It was on the month of February 1947. Okay, the building that the Puentes first started, they leased for 3 years. That was in San Jose. By the end of 3 years, we had already bought 1 acre at the corner of 10th and Mission in San Jose, and we built our own place. 3 days before our lease was up, we were operating in our own place. The front was a grocery store, on the other side was a tortilla factory and room for bags and spices, and on the back was a warehouse to stock merchandise.
Big warehouse.
Very big.
And with a ramp going down for the trucks to load up.
They even had a boat parked in there. I remember, a huge boat, remember? And then we also had a bakery on the side close to the store. Then we added to the buildings as we could afford. We had a room for another office and then some room for a warehouse. We added about 3 times to that building. The bakery had all kinds of Mexican pastries, Mexican bread, sweet bread, French rolls, and we used to call birotes, B-I-R-O-T-E-S.
Birotes, which
Okay.
is a French roll.
A French roll, yeah. We hired bakers because we didn't know how to really bake, but we had Tony in charge of the tortilla department because anything that went wrong, he was the machinist, and he would go over to the machine shop and they would let him make his own parts. But most of the time he ordered parts for the tortilla machine from the factory. We got spices in big barrels, and we had ladies who packaged them in bags. We had everything in spices. And I know that the spices, they used to come in from Mexico, and they would bag them up.
For a long time, I packed spices in my garage.
What were the spices?
Oregano, comino, the little peppers, I forget, chile japonés chiquitos. What else?
In June of 1968, my father was interviewed by Lee Weimers, and the interview appeared in a column called The Lee Side in the San Jose Mercury. And in that, my father recalls that in 1947, his father gathered the sons together. They should go into business together, he reasoned. He would sell his bar and houses to provide capital. There was bickering. Stern glances from Julio Puentes stilled it. The money bought a small grocery at Almaden and Oak in San Jose. I'll never forget the first day of business, Joe says. We took in 90 cents, some milk, a pack of smokes, and some tortillas. But it was the latter item produced by the brothers themselves that would be the key.